Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages,
prepare to be astonished.
Hey, welcome to the Young Prophets podcast, broadcast, whatever this is. I need to start over. I screwed that up completely bad. We'll stick with it. Why not? You know what this is. This is a Young Prophets podcast. Welcome. We're glad you're joining us today. My name's Justin Allen. I'll be your host for today. Behind the scenes to my left, I've got the man, the legend, John Rolfe, behind the scenes making this thing work out. Welcome, John. How you doing?
Hey, everybody. Doing good.
Awesome. I'm excited about today's podcast because we have one of my heroes, a spiritual father of mine. This guy needs no introduction. He is the founder of Global Awakening. He is the man that God used to help kick off what he was doing in Toronto in 1994 through the Toronto Blessing. The world has felt the impact of this man's life and ministry. Today we have with us Dr. Randy Clark on the broadcast.
Let me show you what your love has meant to me. Randy, let me
Dolly
be
Parton
the only
bringing in.
Randy.
We love you, Randy.
Welcome to the broadcast, Randy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Jackson.
So glad to have you with us. I don't know if you've gotten an introduction like that before, but you deserve one like that every single time. I'm so excited and honored that you've decided to come on the show with us today, and I'm glad that we get to have these conversations. I want to give you a second to briefly kind of introduce yourself to those that are watching or listening that may not know who you are. What would you want people to know about you, kind of where you come from and what you're doing right now? So in a few words, kind of tell people about yourself.
Well, I'm 66 years old, father of 4 children, been married since 1975 to the end, and had trained as a Baptist, went to Baptist college, majored in minor religious studies, took all my electives, and went to seminary to Baptist school and finished a doctorate at a Methodist school, and was mentored by John Wimber, and was used of God in January 94 to birth what became known as the Toronto Blessing, and have then been to 54 countries. That's the first time I went outside the United States. Been to 54 countries. I'm in Brazil right now.
Okay.
And been here 100 times.
Oh my goodness, 100 times. That's amazing. Did you ever think that you would have been to Brazil 100 times before all this got started?
Before all this got started in Toronto, I never been out of the country.
You'd never been out of the country one time before this. This is insane. So from 1994, you'd not been anywhere. How old were you in 94? Do the math. I'm not fast with it.
When I went to Toronto, I was 1 month away from 42.
1 month away from 42, and since then, all of this travel has taken place. So it's the Lord caused an acceleration to come on your life. Something about the glory. There's something about the presence. That's exciting. Would you tell me a little bit? So the Toronto Blessing happened. It wasn't something that was necessarily on your radar or something that you were expecting, but God showed up and did a mighty work that touched the world. People came from all over, and it impacted the globe. But your decision to steward what God was doing kind of led to the birthing of Global Awakening. Can you speak to that just a little bit? Tell us about Global Awakening and why it exists and how it exists.
Well, I had a lot of my friends who came up to Toronto, and they kept telling me, your life has changed. You're never going to be able to go back to being what you were. After this, everything's going to be different. I really didn't believe them. I thought in any week the meetings would end. Then I thought, well, any month they're going to end. And then I thought, well, maybe a year or two they're going to end. And then realized that what they said was true. My life would never be the same again. And it opened up more opportunities to go all over the world than I've ever been able to go, actually. I've flown since then about 3 million miles.
3 million miles.
I was working the Catholic Church, the Presbyterian, the Baptist, biggest Baptist churches in South Africa, biggest Baptist church in Brazil, biggest Baptist church in Argentina. So I've got to work in a lot of different denominations, almost all denominations.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So what do you think has been the common denominator that's opened the door, like cross-denominationally for you? A lot of people are very interested in the language exists now. They want to cross streams, or they want to blend different expressions of the Godhead. What would you attribute to your success in being able to cross those denominational lines that generally people try and they fail miserably and they're not able? Do you think it's a grace on your life, or do you think it's something that you did on purpose that kind of opened those doors?
I think it's actually both.
Okay.
I think there's three things. One, I think it's the grace of God. Two, I think there was preparation. Even when I started college at 18, 19, I wanted to learn about other denominations. I wanted to learn what do they believe. I've always been interested in that. And I realize now why I was so interested, because I understand the theological differences, how not to say certain things, how to say what I want in the language of the church that's invited me in, how to use their language to get across what I want so that it's easy for them to understand and to receive. And so I think it was grace. I think there was training. And I think that in addition to those two, was part of it was the education, the training as well as the education.
Okay. No, that's really good. One thing that drew me to you, for those of you who don't know, Randy's one of my spiritual father. He's a mentor to me. I had the opportunity to travel with you around the world for a little bit and train me in what it is to move in revival and renewal and awakening. But I was a Southern Baptist, and for those of you who don't know, that's very conservative. We were cessationist. We didn't believe in the gifts and operation of the Holy Spirit. But one thing that helped me in this transition to the ecstatic encounters and the radical glory was the theological framework. Like, you spoke my language. And I know countless Baptists that you've helped kind of cross over that bridge of the unknown into what is a charismatic expression of revival and renewal. So that was very helpful to me. And I was intrigued by this guy who seems to be similar to me in the way that you think and the way you process. But then, there's a difference when you say, "Come, Holy Spirit," and the fire falls. That was different than what I was experiencing in my life. So there was something to be said for the theological outworking and the framework that you seem to move around in that really almost seemed like it broadened the way, made a wider path for the glory to come in. That was super encouraging to me, and I've watched it happen too. And all of these different denominations that we've it's like when I was traveling with you, it's like, what type of church are we in today? It was like rolling the dice to see where we were going to be, and God's the same everywhere, and that's a lot of fun. Throughout the course of this, you said that you didn't travel much or at all before, and then you've been to Brazil 100 times. You've been to like so many different nations, countries. I think you said 52 or something like that. You also said you're a father, and you have a family, and you had a young family as this was happening. As a young father myself, who's in traveling itinerant ministry, one of the primary questions that I had was, how in the world are you traveling like you're traveling, being able to minister like you're able to minister, and also balancing family well? I kind of want to hear your thoughts on how you maintain your family in the midst of that, or you have some success stories, some failures that you would kind of be like, as a father to young men and women in ministry, what would be your advice on family and the travel and revival?
Well, I don't know how well I did it. I think it turned out well. The kids all love myself and my wife, and they love God, and they love, they're involved in the church, and they seem to have good morals and ethics. And so it turned out better than what I thought it would, actually. It was a real big concern of mine. I'd often be in tears and in the hotels at night, lonely, and praying, God, I feel like I'm gone too much from my kids. But if you'll just be with them and touch them, you can make up for it. But also, I made a priority that when I was home, I never pursued what I wanted, other than for the first 8 years I still pastored, but I didn't pursue any hobbies or anything. My hobby was what can I do to be a blessing to my kids and my wife? What do they want to do? And so when I first come home, I'd spend time with the kids and then spend time with my wife. And always wanted to be available if they called, if they needed or something. And when I was home, pray for them every night and try to really be intentional when I am home to be available and to spend time with them and do things that were fun for them, creating memories and things.
No, that's good. That's so good. And the shift in a lot of the language that's being used now within the church and communities and like emerging expression of the church, there is a heavy emphasis on family, and there's a heavy emphasis on community, and it almost seems like it's even like a major shift where there is so much more of a focus on the entire family, like where in seasons past we would have men's ministry, women's ministry, teens ministry, children's ministry, but it almost seems like people are intentionally gearing their messages, the curriculum and whatnot for entire families. Do you have any take on that and like what that looks like as far as you move in revival? But it's great if we have services and stuff like that, but how do you have revival in the home? How do you ensure that the presence is a priority in that? I know that's kind of a off the wall question, but do you have any take on that, seeing revival within the family unit?
Well, when I was especially first started traveling, kids were young, there wasn't so much that emphasis as much as it was, when you went into the renewal meetings, there really wasn't usually any child care. So if you took your children, they would be in it. So they actually would experience it.
Okay.
Experience the presence of God. So it wasn't saying, okay, you got children's church over here. Like in the normal Sunday service, if you went to renewal, the kids were in with it, so they would have experienced it. So I guess that's just what was happening at the time.
Okay.
I can't say that I think for a renewal, it just was when you were in renewal, there really wasn't any childcare, so it had to be if you're there.
Yeah.
Your family, kids are with you.
Yeah.
Children are with you. They're going to be in there with you.
Okay. Gotcha. So everybody gets baptized by fire in the midst of it. You learn by just being thrown in the deep end. That's fantastic. No, I want to.
It's like the kids. The kids were exposed to manifestations. Let's put it that way.
Exposed to men. That's light, gentle language. I like it. Oh, that's fantastic. And we talk about this too all the time. There's the vernaculars out there: awakening, revival, renewal, and everybody has a take. I think people would be very interested to know what is Randy Clark's definition of revival, because it can be general and it can be ambiguous in a charismatic culture. But what to you are some fundamental elements of, okay, this is revival, this is a manifest presence of God, this is that which they spoke of? Like you walked through Toronto in the early days. You've had your hands in what God is doing in the earth for the last 20 odd years. What is revival by your definition and through experience and through study, and what do you say it is?
Well, in the earliest days of Toronto, we were told it's too early to call it a revival, called it a renewal.
Okay.
But as time went on, it became evident that it really was revival because of what was spreading rapidly.
Okay.
It had, in church history today, in some of the church history books, it's considered one of the three greatest outpourings of the Spirit of the 20th century. And what I call revival, in the Baptist church I grew up in, you could have revival at a local church level. You could have it at a regional level. But Toronto was one of the world revivals. Yeah. And in some language, they make a distinction. And it wasn't a distinction we made in the Baptist church. We didn't use the term awakening. We just used the term revival.
Okay.
But as I got exposed to other groups, like the First Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening, then we began to realize that when a revival spreads so large, it's considered like a national or worldwide revival or a national awakening. Then I think awakening just is a little higher term in the sense of you wouldn't call something awakening if it's at one church, but you could call it revival.
Okay.
But if it spreads over nations or through a nation, then it would be an awakening. But it would be a synonym for that. It would still be a revival in certain circles. Okay. So, but for me, the real evidence of revival is people being renewed and revived, or people that who are renewed, and they begin to reach people with the gospel. People start getting a lot of salvations. Usually, the evidence of revival is that there's people who go to the mission field. There's a quick spread, a real increase of the missionary force, and also concern for social justice and the ministry to the poor usually follows real revival. Okay. And all that stuff happened.
Yeah. So the impact of renewal and refreshing and awakening begins to birth tangible results in people's life, which manifest in change in the social climate and stuff like that. No, that's good. I like that quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of mix it up and chop it up a little bit, because there's like 1,000 things I want to ask you while I have you on this format, and I think there's a lot of things people would like to know. What is the most significant miracle you've ever seen?
A 25-year-old police officer that had been shot in the stomach, the bullet severed his spine, got out of his wheelchair and walked when a person who had never prayed for anybody in their life on our team prayed for him in Manaus, Brazil. Would have been I think the greatest. A man I prayed for in Louisville, Kentucky, at a Bob Rogers church there, Evangel Church, 20 some odd years ago, got healed of ALS.
Oh, wow.
Would be a great miracle. A guy down in Fortaleza, Brazil, whose optic nerve was not connected to the back of the eye, and he's totally blind, got his sight, would be a great one. A guy who had been blind for 50 years, whose eyes were covered with 1/8 of an inch thick scar tissue from a muriatic acid spill at 5 years old.
Yeah.
A woman prayed for him for 5 hours. Nothing happened, but 3 days later, he woke up with brand new eyes.
Come on.
Perfect vision. So those were some of the greatest ones I've seen.
Just a few. Man, I'm all stirred up already. We need to just like give a call for healing right now.
Yeah,
you might get healed watching this.
We actually have a lot of those videos that he just mentioned.
Oh, wow.
On video, and so we'll put those down in the comments.
Yeah,
the ones that we know that we have.
Come on. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in the comments after this is over, if you're watching this, you can view those. Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, and Justin, just a while ago, Marcus is with me. I prayed for the 10 out of 11 women with psoriatic arthritis that's been healed. 10 out of 11 in a row.
Come on.
It started in December at the same church, and it just happened again. And she broke into tears. She couldn't bend her knee. She couldn't squat. And when she tried to show us if she was improving the first time, she went in almost tears, and we had to help her. Two of us help her stand back up.
Yeah.
But within 5 minutes, she was jumping up
Come
and down,
on.
squatting, tears rolling. She got healed, and her sister has it, her mother has it, she had it, and so it really was just a few minutes
Come
ago. Amazing healing.
Just a few minutes ago. That's amazing. That's one of the cool
Well,
things.
actually, probably like a couple of hours.
Couple of hours.
So.
It was today, though. That's a fresh testimony. One of the cool things about getting to run with you is that there's always fresh testimonies. And sometimes, the first time in my life, I'm like, people ask me, well, what's the coolest testimony? It's like, I have too many to choose from. I'm just going to pick some, and then I'll remember others as I go. But I love the testimony. Some that you shared were like, hey, this person had never prayed for anyone before, and it was still one of the most radical miracles that even you have ever seen, which you've seen them. One thing I like too is Toronto was something that was unexpected. It happened. It was kind of like one of those sovereign moves of God. Yes, people say yes and they agree with what God's wanting to do, but there's also part of God just wanting to do something. At what point did you shift? And I'm not saying you've shifted your focus entirely, but there is a heavy emphasis in the ministries of Global Awakening, and particularly your life, on healing. It's almost like revival happened, but out of that, there was this hunger birth for healing at a new level. When do you think that shift took place, or was it just kind of like an organic, like it naturally shifted there? Because you've written more books on healing, I think, than anybody that has ever lived. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it should be. I think you've written tons and tons of books on healing, and your life is about that. I mean, you can watch it even when you're sharing those testimonies, your face lights up, and I always love it when people give testimonies because it genuinely brings you joy. When did it shift towards healing for you, and when did that become such a core value in your life?
It's actually a shift back.
Okay.
My first time to be baptized in the Spirit, I was a Baptist pastor, had been one for ordained 14 years, and because I had been healed at 18, that led to my calling to the ministry. I was always interested in healing, but I wasn't seeing it, and so it started in 84, 10 years before Toronto, with the focus on healing that ended up causing me to be filled with the Spirit. Then when Toronto happened, it was like the emphasis was really on reviving burned out pastors as I had been. And so the emphasis was actually more on impartation, which has stayed in emphasis since Toronto. But in addition to impartation, it was not so much just renewal. That's why I changed the name from Renewal Ministries International to Global Awakening.
Okay.
I wanted to see more than a renewal. I wanted to see the church equipped. I wanted to see people saved. I want to see a awakening, which is inclusive of discipling the people who get saved to pray for healing.
Okay.
So after a few years after Toronto, I just realized, man, I want to refocus back to the emphasis of equipping the saints, which was a classic vineyard value that I learned under Wimber. I was still a vineyard pastor at the time. And it's never left that. So it's been let's equip the saints for prophecy, words of knowledge, praying for healing, and through impartation and teaching. I think it's both. It's impartation and it's also teaching and understanding. So it kind of there was a season of 3 or 4 years that the emphasis was mainly on it wasn't so much on the equipping anymore. It was just on the impartation, God come. But actually 1 year after Toronto in January 95, we had a major outbreak of healing where I saw more healing in 1 month I'd seen the first 24 years of ministry put together. So that shifted it back to healing in that January 95.
So, do you hear that? Feels like there's a time for something. Okay.
All right, it's that time in our broadcast where we put our guests on the spot and we get to see them in a little bit of a different light than what we normally see. And so we're going to take this time to do a little segment that we're going to call Name That Randy.
Okay.
Name That Randy.
Sounds intriguing.
And we've got a special guest joining us in the studio today. See if you recognize this guy, Randy.
I recognize him.
All right, let's see.
In the mirror 20 years ago.
All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna play a little game called Name That Randy. So I'm gonna play a soundbite, or I'm gonna list off a description of a famous Randy, and we're gonna have a competition to see who gets the most points here. So Justin, you be our score taker here.
Okay.
All right. So Randy, I'm gonna go with you first. And I'm going to play a soundbite for you and see if you can identify this Randy. Here we go. Here's sound clip number 1.
The tower of power, too sweet to be sour. I'm funky like a monkey. Sky's the limit and space is the place.
All right, name that Randy.
I haven't a clue.
Can I jump? Can I steal?
You can steal.
You can steal.
You can steal.
Okay.
Josh. So to Josh for the steal.
Okay, so that's Randy Savage.
Randy Savage.
Macho Man Randy Savage.
Macho Man Randy Savage.
You keeping score, Justin?
WWF.
Yeah, WWF.
Wrestler.
Okay.
Just for the record, the Clarks are the most competitive people I've ever met in my entire life, so we wanted to let them go at it and then see what kind of sparks fly. So
This is going to be good.
watch the competitive juices flow.
We have Family Day coming up, so the winner here is gonna hold this over.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
There will be hospital visits afterwards.
All right, here's our next clip. All right, this is to you, Josh. Can you identify this Randy?
Boy, you got a friend in me. Yeah, you got a friend in me.
Name that Randy.
Randy Newman?
Yes.
Oh, we got it.
Ding, ding, ding.
Oh, my goodness.
All right.
All right, 2 points for Josh.
2 points for Josh.
All
It's
right.
over. It's
I
over,
believe in you,
Dad.
Randy. I'm
There's
pulling
no
for
coming
you.
back from this.
All right, I'm gonna give Randy an easy one here. Hopefully he gets this one. All right, next Randy. Here we go.
Baby, I'm gonna love you forever. Forever and ever, amen.
What's the name of the country western guy?
He's phoning a friend.
Hey, will we allow it? Will we allow?
There's a Randy. I haven't seen him.
We'll allow it. So if
country
Marcus
western guy.
if Marcus knows his name, we'll take it as an answer.
They'll take it, Marcus, if you know the country western guy.
Forever and ever,
Randy.
amen is the name of the song.
3 seconds. 2
Forever.
seconds. 1 second. Time's up.
Can't even get it right with the internet.
John, who is it?
All right, Josh, can you?
No, I have no
clue.
idea.
No clue.
I don't think I've ever heard that song.
Randy Travis.
Randy Travis, guys.
Randy Travis.
You were close.
Yes, Randy Travis. I knew that.
He knew it. It just eluded him. So good. All
okay.
right, so nobody gets that
I've
one.
heard of Randy Travis.
Yep.
All
Okay. All right.
I
Here.
hadn't heard of Randy Savage.
Randy Savage, the Macho Man.
It's been a while. Randy
It's been a
Savage.
minute, yeah.
I think he actually passed away a few years
He
ago.
might have. God rest his soul.
Okay. All right. This isn't a soundbite. This is just you've got to identify this Randy. Who are we on right now?
Right here,
We're back.
right
all right,
here,
we're back to
right
Josh.
here. I'm up 2-0.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
This is a football player. This Randy was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings.
Randy Moss.
That's not even fair.
Easy.
Yep. He got it.
That's 3.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Hey, I would have never got that. Randy Moss, football.
Okay. All right. We'll do another football Randy here.
Oh.
All right. This is for you, Randy.
This is your.
Okay. This was back in the 70s. So.
Might as well give it to Josh. I don't know any football players.
All right, this football Hall of Fame defensive end was nine-time All-Pro in his 13-year career with the Dallas Cowboys. In 1978, he won the Super Bowl with teammate Tony Dorsett.
78 Dorsett teammate.
Yep, Dallas Cowboys.
He's typing all of this into Google, frantically typing this into Google.
You can't use Siri. That's not allowed. He's got a Marcus. He doesn't need a
Okay,
Siri.
final answer. Just
I
guess.
haven't a clue.
No clue. We have no answer.
Josh?
No
Josh?
idea.
No clue.
Okay.
Randy White.
Randy White.
Randy White.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's go back to the sound clips here. All right, Josh, is this to you? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Here's the sound clip. Here we go.
Oh, that's an RV. Yeah. I borrowed it off a buddy of mine. He took my house. I took the RV. It's a good-looking vehicle, ain't it?
Is it Randy Quaid?
Randy Quaid.
Randy Quaid. Oh, my
That's
goodness.
it. You got it.
Cousin Eddie from the National
Cousin
Lampoon
Eddie from
series.
Christmas Vacation.
Cousin Eddie. Cousin Eddie. I think Cousin Eddie.
Christmas Vacation.
That's Christmas Vacation. Do we get bonus points for knowing the movie?
I think he should get
He
a
should
point
get
for
a
that.
point for that,
He
yeah.
gets a point for that.
Randy Quaid. He's
That way I don't get stumped.
Yeah, that way- so right now, Josh is at 4. Randy's at 1.
okay.
I think it's Randy's question. I still think you can make it.
All right. Here's another famous Randy. Here comes the soundbite. Here we go.
All right, so yo, dog, there's some good stuff and some bad stuff here. All right, here we go. So you started and it was a little weird for me, but dude, you know what? Yeah, I like this. Baby, a way to start it off.
Randy on with American Idol.
The wheels are turning.
Big dog.
Big
Yep,
dog.
Yep.
He's
yep.
there.
He's on. You're on the trail.
You got it.
Big dog.
I know you got it. You're so
American
close.
Idol. Randy.
It's right on the tip of your tongue.
He's tall. He's big.
Yep.
He's
Yep.
black.
Yeah. Come on.
Last name starts
I'm
with
ready.
Take a whack at it.
I'm ready,
with a
guys.
J.
I'm ready, guys.
Huh?
Give me the point.
Jackson.
Jackson, there we go. We'll
Yeah.
take it. Come on.
He got it. He got it. Okay, Josh, you may know this. Let's see. This retired martial arts fighter was a 3-time UFC heavyweight champ.
Oh, I know this one.
His nicknames were The Natural and Captain America. UFC.
Oh, yeah. Can I call Will? Can I call Will?
Will would know.
Will and Randy.
If Will answered his phone, I would allow it, but I think he won't.
Can we give it a try?
Give it a shot. Why not?
Can I give
I'm
it
going to
a
add
shot?
a Will Hart into the mix.
Let's see.
We'll give it a shot. We'll hold off.
Is it UFC?
Phone a friend.
UFC?
UFC. Yep.
UFC.
3-time heavyweight
See if
champ.
this works.
If
There's,
this works.
there's 0% chance that he picks his phone up
If
right
Will
now.
Hart answers his
But if
phone,
it is-
it's God's will for Josh to get this question.
Hey, I need the
Oh,
name
he
of a
answered. He
UFC 3-time
answered.
champ, first name Randy. You're my phone
Will
friend.
Hart on the phone, people.
Randy Couture.
Ding,
got it.
Randy Couture. And Will Hart knows him because he's a name
Oh, my
dropper.
gosh, right?
Oh, welcome to the podcast,
Welcome
Will
to
Hart.
the podcast, Young
The
Prophets.
Young
Will
Prophets,
Hart.
for your cameo.
This is
The
your
phone a
inaugural.
friend paid off.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much. I'm playing against the game against my Randy, and we're naming other famous Randys, and I couldn't think of that one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, bud.
You win.
Love you. I'll talk to you
Okay.
later.
You get a T-shirt.
Bye-bye.
Well,
That's a minor miracle as well.
I can't believe he answered his phone. That's amazing.
Okay, what's the score? I've
won, guys. I won.
I've got more here,
5 to
but
2.
No.
5 to 2.
based on the past
No
questions, you're not going to get any more of these.
Good game, Dad.
Oh, good game. Well, that's our game.
All right, back to you, Justin.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being a good sport, Randy.
All right.
We like to mix it up a little bit in there. And now that we have Josh with us, we're going to kind of open it up to...
Purgatory's over.
Purgatory's over. Now that Josh is with us, we're going to kind of like allow him to jump in on some of these as well. So we'll mix it up a little more with all of us. And I want to talk about this. As far as I think that there is a transition, a way of thinking within the church and within revival culture where we used to gather around meetings and around stuff like that. I don't think the meetings will cease, but I do think there's a higher emphasis on Seven Mountains and culture through influencing people through media, arts and entertainment, government, et cetera, et cetera. There's language that speaks of that. How do you see God moving in the days ahead, and what do you think are some places that revival, like where you talked about, Randy, how revival is when people get a fresh touch and awakening to who they are in God, they go back to where they came from and they implement that change. You as well, Josh, where do you see that happening? Start with you, Randy, and then we'll throw it to Josh and see where it goes. What are the next frontiers of ministry that are not within the four walls of the church?
Well, I think that's an interesting question because I just came from a transformation summit here in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, and there's English-speaking people from Australia, businessmen, and from the United States, and they said, man, this is unbelievable how much the business community is a part of the revival. And I just listened to the pastor of the largest traditional Baptist church in the nation, where we've been for the last 5 years. And he was just sharing what all they've done and affecting, the hospitals, the clinics and stuff. It's just amazing. So I do think that there is the transition from just affecting the church, the revival just affecting reviving the church, but the church revive being now called to impact culture, impact the society. I think that is much more accepted today than it was in the past, and not only accepted but expected. Yeah, it's almost like it's encouraged now more than it was, because it's like 2% of people are called to full-time ministry, itinerant or as a pastor. We're actually encouraging people to not be condemned by the fact that they're not called to full-time ministry. They can minister in their respective businesses. Josh, what do you think, man? What do you see as the next frontiers of ministry and the expression of the gospel in the world around us? Where do you see that at?
I think the emphasis now, because I'm reading all these biographies on sort of Hudson Taylor and N.M. Judson, I'm starting to read them to the kids or whatever, and that it used to be that was like when you had this sort of encounter, that was where there was this huge need for the Great Commission to go out and do it, and the way you did that was you jump on a boat or you go somewhere and you just go to somewhere that they've never heard from it. We're now in 2018, and although there still are places that haven't heard the name of Jesus, there are ways to getting that message to them without having to be necessarily on the front lines of somewhere. And I think that there's a understanding more so of today that the church is the body and the people, and that you can have certain talents and giftings and have been trained in certain areas, and God might call you to step out and jump on that boat and go somewhere like you did with Dina Van Thol, and they're doing amazing work over there in China. But there's a more openness and a more there's pastoral oversight that's coming along, saying like, no, God maybe has called you exactly where you're at in the arts, and you can utilize that stuff. So that's why we've seen people who have come up and they've wanted to make movies, and they want to affect the culture. And I do think there is more so that is going to be some of the news through media and stuff like that, the arts. I think that's an area where the Christians are just living their lives and using the talents that God has given them, but also marrying that with the power of the Holy Spirit that's going to allow them to scale that mountain. I always believe it's a bottom down. The way of the Lord is to go low, and then you get raised up. So I do believe that to the extent those mountains, they're going to be scaled and climbed through that way. But yeah.
No, that's great. I love it. One of the things that I've experienced as I've been traveling a bit more on the road and whatnot, doing revival ministry, and for the past 10 years I've been doing some form of church ministry, is people would always come to me and they would be relatively successful in their own right and in their own realm, and they'd be like, I'm so dissatisfied doing this, I want to leave it all and I want to preach. And I'm like, you can impact so many more people where you are. And I found it's almost like this liberation, this freeing of the mind, if you will, to realize that, hey, God is actually pleased with me in this capacity. And the traditional framework of I have to do this to please God is cast off. And we're seeing new creative ways of the expression of the gospel. And what do you think What do you think about that, Randy, as far as people getting a hold of Jesus and Jesus getting a hold of them, and all of a sudden there's creative ways of expressing the gospel? I mean, you go back and you look at videos of Toronto in '94, and your gatherings look very different than our gatherings now. Worship has changed a lot. Our clothing has changed a lot. The way we do meetings and stuff like that has changed a lot. You had massive amounts of people come in, but there's something about this generation right now, partly because the population of the earth is increasing, so there's a lot more people. But gathering people around the message of the gospel creatively, what do you think about that? Like, is God speaking to new people, new ways? How do you feel about the internet and like different options where Josh brought it up? You may not have to sell everything and leave and go to another nation. You can sell, you can give yourself away fully, but in a different capacity. You got any thoughts on that, Randy?
I would agree with Josh.
Yeah, I like that.
Short
sweet answer. I'm really taken back by that. I wasn't expecting that. No, I think this is cool too. I don't know if we properly introduced Josh or not, but Josh is Randy's oldest son. He is what is your official title here?
Executive director.
Executive director. He is the boss man. Randy is the father, apostolic leader. Josh is now taking care of things, and we're looking at some new ways to share the gospel and what does the future of Global Awakening look like. So I'm excited that he's here as well. But you guys, I've got a father and son right here. I've got a global apostolic father, and I've got a son who walked through this. Sometimes the world around you glorifies the process, but sometimes the process is challenging. What was the most challenging thing? Just speaking to you guys, not like the whole family, but did you guys ever have any rough stuff you had to work out, like relationally, that maybe people, if somebody out there, their father or their mother is a mainstream minister and everybody knows them, but you've got pastors' kids, they go through stuff that nobody else does. Would you have anything to speak about that process from your perspective? That's a loaded gun.
Are you looking at me? So
I'm
you're
looking at Josh.
Me directly, or are you
I'm
asking
looking at
both
Josh.
of us?
I'm going to let you speak into it, and then I'm going to let you and your dad go back and forth.
Okay. Now I might need. Did we have anything that we had to? Did we have any big things to work through? I mean, again, I know I'm speaking specifically about my experience, and what was interesting, actually, we go on a vacation, all of the family and whatnot. We tried to once a year get together and do stuff with cousins and brothers and everything. And we were out, the siblings were out one night, and we were talking, and it was just remarkable because I'm the oldest, as you said, and there's 5 years sort of between me and my sister, the next one, and then there's, I think, 4.5 years between her and the next brother, and then 2 years between them. So it's a pretty big span of time. And my sister and our experience and sort of how we were just, sharing the stories of growing up and life and what it was like, and some of the things that we're struggling, as you suggested, which is, not surprising to people. I mean,
it's life.
It is life. Were drastically different, and the viewpoint that, like, how if I were writing sort of an autobiography of my childhood and my life, my sister and mine, we both had it was like when we were sort of painting the picture with words, it was almost identical.
Okay.
And my younger brothers was almost completely opposite.
Okay.
But they were sort of agreement on what they perceived their life to be. So obviously my takeaways would be much different from my my younger brother's takeaways, but for mine, because I think I was sort of, I mean, 94, my goodness, I was 12, 13 years old by the time this thing really kicked off. Now, they had been pastoring and planting churches basically my whole life. So we kind of just grew up with either going every night to a different house to do a home group church, so growing up in church, or at a certain age when you're old enough, just sort of being at home, taking care of yourself while they're out doing that. Because it's a lot of time-consuming, rigorous work planting a church. You need to be called to be a church planter, not just to be an effective church planter, but to be one for the sake of your family as well. And so for us, I feel like when it's shifted from just normal church life to renewal, it was more lively. It was more exciting. The gifts were more demonstrative. It was more wide scale, but it was still pretty much the same. And so his travel, because obviously as you see, we're talking with him in Brazil, because even though he's scaling back, he still travels quite a bit. And at that point he was traveling a lot as well. But it was more par for the course, really. I don't think that there was much. I mean, again, by the time I traveled with him for a while, which is good. I mean, that would be one thing. To the extent people can take their kids with them and incorporate them into their life, that would be one takeaway. Definitely do it. I thought it was great. I'm excited for the time when my children hopefully get to travel and go some places with them. They're a little too young and right now, but hopefully a couple of years from now they'll get to. I think that was an amazing experience. Another thing that I would say, and then I'll kick it over to Dad here, is just don't, if you're in the will of the Lord and you're doing what the Lord's called you to do, like, recognize the hardship on your family, but don't bring back, or I'm not saying Randy did this, but just I've seen some people do it who they overcompensate. They feel like, oh, I was gone doing this, and so now I'm just going to do this other stuff, instead of being like, yeah, this is hard on all of us, but like, this is the call and this is why I'm doing it. Really like articulate with your kids sort of what it is. They might go through a season when they're troubled by that and they don't like God so much, because why would you take, but in the long run, let me tell you that he's in control, and it is the best thing to do, to really sit down and be like, this is what we're doing it for, this is why, and you can bring them alongside of it, and they can feel like they're sort of also making an offering of sort of themselves, and they can really partner with you in that ministry. Yeah. So that would be my recommendation.
No, that's fantastic. Randy, what was the most taxing, I don't know what the word is, but like, if there was a moment where you and Josh ever had a moment where you just came together as father and son, and maybe later in life, I know there was a time when I was about 16, my dad felt that we were supposed to move from Florida and move to Tennessee, and things look differently when you're 16 years old than you do when you're in your mid-30s. And coming around, I see that the decisions he made were some of the best ones. I think it's kind of coming full circle. It's like, we did this, and even though you didn't understand what was going on, it was for your good. My dad was always honest with me about the purpose in which he did what he was doing, even when I didn't understand. So was there ever a moment where you felt like it just clicked with you and Josh, or like for you as a father, where you're like, this is going to be all right, and like, he's getting this? I don't know how to ask the question. I'm just very intrigued by how healthy your family is through this process, because there's a laundry list of people that don't have healthy families, or families that even survive the process. And particularly fathers to sons. Can you speak to that, Randy?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind immediately, Justin, is when I took Josh with me to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we were going down line, he was following me and praying, and they said, when you prayed for me, Randy, I felt power. When Josh prayed, it was stronger. There was a woman there that he prayed for who was dying of cancer. We found out years later she just felt so much power going to her when he prayed, and she was healed of cancer. I think it might have been that same meeting or shortly thereafter. Josh probably was 14, maybe 15 years old, I'm just guessing. But I remember seeing, as clear as day, as about giving your life to God, serving him, going, if it need be, mission field, whatever. And Josh was standing there just weeping as the Spirit of God was touching him. And I remember that as one of the greatest times in my life. A little bit later, on the other hand, I just remember feeling like that probably the pain of the situation was increasing, and he was like slipping away somewhat emotionally. And I think particularly the second time we were in Argentina together, the first time, I just remember feeling very much concerned that somehow he's backing away. Not that anything his fault is my fault, but those are the two times I remember being in the nations together. One was such powerful commonality, and the other one, it felt like, I remember thinking, I may be losing him.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's what I was looking for. I'm gonna shift out. Josh, I want to thank you for jumping on and being vulnerable and open and all of that stuff. I know we're prying and digging into your life.
Thank you for having me.
But I think it's actually going to help some people. So thank you for that. It's been a blast to have you with us. And as we segue out, Randy, I always like to leave people with this question, because the nature of this broadcast is that it's a prophetic broadcast in nature, and that we all have the ability to hear the voice of God and kind of through relationship relationship and through intimacy, we hear what the Lord is saying about what he wants to do in the days ahead, and then we partner with that. So I want to know what the Lord is saying to you about the days ahead, the next 5 to 10 years. What do you think God is doing in the earth? It can be on any subject or it can be general, but what is God saying to you about the days ahead, and how are you partnering with that?
Oh, actually, Justin, I'm in a very good place, a very happy place, and a very fulfilled place. And I feel that the next 5 years is going to be really the joy of watching you and Will, and who's going to work with Heidi now, and William and Paul, and later, with Brian and then Marcus. Seeing all of you guys step into a level of just very exponential growth. You guys already are going, your schedules are fuller than mine was. Even after Toronto, I was seldom, the first 2 or 3 years after Toronto, I was seldom more than 6 months out. You guys are already ahead of it. The size churches you're going to, it took me probably 5 to 10 years to get to those size churches. So I'm excited about what I see in you guys. I'm excited that as I slow down, even though I'm slowing down some, I'm still going to be writing. And I think my role as a theologian, my professors at the seminary said, if you're slowing down, it's actually going to be good because of what you're going to write, the quality of it. So, and the courses, teaching and things. So I see it still being busy, but being at home more, being with grandkids more, being with my kids more. And I'm still going more than full time, even now at 66. I'm hoping within 2 years to get down to below full time, which is 120 days.
Okay.
So, I look at it in a very positive light, a good light for everybody. I think it's going to be a very fulfilled. It's like watching the fruit of years of sowing coming back now.
Come on.
So I'm excited about it.
No, I love that. And I love so much that you came on and agreed to come on the show. Thank you, Randy, for your time with us. I really appreciate it. I think it's going to impact a lot of lives. And we're looking forward to, doing life with you in the future. I don't have to go anywhere. We get to mix it up. So I want to encourage you guys to pay attention. Keep your eyes open, your ears open to see the next release for Young Prophets. We've loved having you with us now. Don't forget to subscribe. Check us out everywhere that podcasts are found. We're out. See ya.